Locho sampo pa gyu trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarno da belge drolor zampe ze parche pande lame shabla solwade Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasan Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Karm Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nish Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Karm Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nish Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dagi Jetsun Lama Tuche Che Nyamda Dala Tuche Sikso So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sungi Nawa Tsedo So Sechi Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshune Yila Sambe Dede Malupa Gemel Hungi Drupra Chingilo Soni Sodan Dikdun Shakpe Tse Dungi Namke Yinsu Lekshune Lapchen Tsoni Yonsu Tsopa Dan Cheran Nyetun Chamra Chingilo Chancho Pargi Ninsen Tukun Tu Niu Peme Siudru Lekshune Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshishi Tungen Dela Drupra Chingilo Dagi Lona Chola Chokpa Dan Chumin Samjur Ngemba Shiwata Chedan Tumbe Dudum Malupa Beme Lungi Drupra Chingelo Dorna Tingne Tsera Tamche Dan Teche Pardo Nekaba Tamche Tu Rese Kyamne Lama Kele Me Tukje Chingi Dala Sikso Sol Gongyab Drewe Nyamda Dachala Jetsun Lame Tuje Rabgong Udan Sungi Nawa Dralme Tu Nyamso Nyongwe Kesan Topra Sho Kewa Kunto Yanda Lama Dan Dralme Cheki Pela Longche Chin Sadan Lamge Yende Rabzone Dorje Change Kopa Nyur Top Shoya Pakyu Ke Kudan Dagi Alu Pakyu Ke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyu Ke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tön Yerme Chiktu Chingi Lo Makyu Ke Kudan Dagi Lo Makyu Ke Sundan Dagi Makyu Ke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tön Yerme Chiktu Chingi Lo Om Muni Padme Hum 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 Om Muni Padme H Mahamuni Shakyamuni Svoha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Svoha Om Muni Muni Hamuni Shakyamuni Svoha Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhiswohayatayata Te Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhiswohatayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhiswoha. Sangye Chudan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chudan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chudan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparshon.
In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Ci mettiamo in una posizione
We
confortevole,
sit in a comfortable position,
con la schiena dritta,
with our back straight but not tense.
le spalle
Our
rilassate,
shoulders are relaxed.
la bocca
Our mouth is relaxed,
con la lingua che si
with
riposa
our tongue resting on the palate.
gli occhi leggeri,
Eyes slightly closed, looking downwards.
la consapevolezza.
awareness on our breath.
Cominciamo
We
semplicemente
start simply by observing our own breath.
osserviamo i movimenti del
We observe the movement of our body.
Osserviamo la sensazione alle
We
narici,
observe the sensation at our nostrils of the air going in and of the air going out.
osserviamo la temperatura
We
del
observe the temperature of the air
respirare,
that is more fresh as we breathe in
leggermente
and slightly warmer as we breathe out.
con gentilezza.
With gentleness,
Portiamo il nostro respiro ad
we
un
bring our own breath to an abdominal breath.
respiro
We breathe in
profondamente fino a
deeply
gonfiare leggermente.
until swelling the belly slightly.
Espiriamo
And breathe out deeply until contracting the abdomen slightly.
respiriamo con calma,
We
senza
breathe
fretta.
with calmness, with no rush,
Passiamo a una respirazione
and we
cosiddetta
move
yogica.
on to a yogic breathing, where we breathe in a continuous flow, and other than feeling the lower part of the belly, we also feel the upper part of our chest. And then we empty first the upper part of our chest, and then lastly the lower part of our abdomen, contracting it slightly. So we breathe in, feeling the air from the bottom to top, and then we breathe out, emptying the air from top to bottom.
Permettiamo di creare uno spazio,
We
come una sorta
allow ourselves to create a space, like a sort of moment of silence after the in-breath and after the out-breath. We hold the air, not as a forceful thing, but as a simple pose of rest after the in-breath and the out-breath. So I breathe in,
mantengo,
then hold, and then breathe out and hold.
Inspiriamo
We
contando.
breathe in, counting to 4, hold with 4, breathe out with 4 and hold with 2. So breathe in 4, hold 4, breathe out 4, hold 2, breathe in 4.
Inspiro 4,
Breathe in 4,
trattengo 6,
hold 6, breathe out 6 and hold 3.
inspiro,
Breathe in,
inspiro 4,
breathe in 4.
se confortevole,
If it's comfortable, then I hold with 8, breathe out with 8 and hold with 4. If for someone that was too long, then you can maintain the time that is more comfortable for yourself. Otherwise, we breathe in with 4, hold with 8, breathe out with 8 and hold with 4.
Manteniamo la consapevolezza
We
sul
maintain the
respiro.
awareness on our breath,
Respiriamo in 4
and we
fasi,
breathe in 4 phases. Without counting,
con la calma,
with
inspiriamo.
calmness, we breathe in with calmness,
Tratteniamo quello
hold
che sia
as long as
confortevole.
it's comfortable,
Espiriamo
then
tutta
breathe
l'aria.
out all the air slowly,
Tratteniamo
and
quello
hold again for what is comfortable.
piano piano, mantenendo la
Bit by
consapevolezza.
bit, as we maintain the awareness on our breath, we open our eyes, move our hands.
Namo yal haye ke dan le dan ne jin ke rubun dan da mi ke nam dan ruwa kun ge ranam che champa tham che ke to da ge che ten tong. Buongiorno.
Good morning.
È interessante vedere
It's interesting to see
come
how
spesso
often
le cose che ci insegnano di più,
things that teach us the most, the moments where we learn the
non sono
most,
necessariamente
are
i momenti
not
in cui
necessarily
stiamo
those
leggendo
moments where we are
qualcosa che ci sta
reading
spiegando.
something or someone is explaining to us.
È un po' simile a
It's
quello
a
che
bit similar
come
to
Amit Goswami descrive il processo creativo.
what Amiko Swami describes as the creative process, that and he describes it as made out of four steps. So first you meet some information, then some time passes, that information that we have received, that encounter that we had, works inside of ourselves in an unconscious way. Then there is a second encounter with something that doesn't have much to do with that first thing, but that activates it. And from that, we have the moment where an idea arises that maybe has nothing to do with that thing. So the four phases are: first is the encounter, the incubation, then the second encounter, and the creative act.
Certe volte succede che magari sentiamo dei insegnamenti,
So maybe sometimes we listen to some teachings, understand some things, and at that moment it remains very conceptual. Then at a certain point we leave something, we leave a situation, and poof, that awakens something inside of ourselves. And taking back the point of yesterday again, before going to the one of today, there is an anecdote of my life that touched me in that sense, and many of you already know it. And it was the time that I was in Tibet, and I went in the early morning to receive teachings from my master, early in the sense that it was more or less dawn, even if it was 8 in the morning, because let's remember that Lhasa follows the time of Beijing, but normally it would be 2 hours and a half of difference. So when it's 8 in the morning, actually it would be like a 5:30, something like that. So the sun arises around 8. And just to close this parenthesis, the thing that I never understood, even if the sun arises at 8, they start practices at 5, which would be like 3. I never understood this exactly, but anyway. So when there is the meditation practice, the pujas, the mornings, I start at like 5 in the morning, when actually with the sun, okay, but anyway. My master received me at 8 in the morning, one day, and as I was getting there, in front of me, it was the abbot of the monastery. Let's imagine the monastery of Tashilumpo, this old building, and he was living in the same room where for many generations the abbot of the monastery had lived. Even the bed was still the same. Very beautiful, with all the paintings and small and everything. And then one day I was going there, it was more or less like at the third floor. And in Tibet, I don't know exactly why, but the stairs are almost like 90 degrees. Even there was a rope in the middle of them. They're really like that. And I was climbing up these stairs, and in front of me there is a boy, a young boy, that was carrying attached to his head a container of water of about 25 liters. And even if he was a young guy born in Tibet that was strong, and anyway he was short of breath. We were at 4,000 meters, and he makes me go ahead and I see the scene and try to connect, and okay, he's carrying this water. Where does this water go? And I see that in the courtyard outside of my master's bedroom there was a sort of little pool for water where it was placed, and they used the water for everything, for washing, for cooking and everything. And me, with my technical mind, I looked and I see that in the courtyard there was a faucet, a tap, and so to bring the water from there to 3 floors up, then shouldn't be too difficult, but I mean, at least let's do it in the abbot's house. And so after the teachings ended, I asked him, Kela, a question, but I saw that, okay, first the guy was carrying water, but why don't we carry it with a pipe to simplify life and everything? And he gave me the answer that I would have never expected, that impressed me. And he said, if young guys don't learn to put effort and constancy with the simplest thing of life, like carrying water, how then will they be able to have constancy and put effort in meditation and studies? And he's right. Because effort, constancy, is first of all a habit also. So, when I'm able to get used to not give a lot of weight to something that is difficult, to do something with constancy, then instead of carrying water, I meditate. When we are afraid of effort and anything that is a bit difficult, then it seems terrible. And so we base our life very often on this law of the minimum effort and maximum comfort. And what I ask myself, does this law work or not at the end?
Noi dove possiamo faticare meno ed essere più confortevoli?
When we can put less effort and be more comfortable, we do it, right? But there are some things where there is no way, like the dishwasher of emotions, where you put your emotions and they automatically get clean, where you don't have to face them. There is no like vacuum cleaner of the mental defilements that take away the dust of the anger and so on. So, but we are looking for this. I see like people looking for the healer here and the healer there, the little pill, also the natural things. But anyway, I want like the miracle from outside.
Però gira, rigira.
But at the end, eventually, it's up to ourselves. And so, one of the important things that I just wanted to reconnect with, it's the important for us to be able by all means to get used to putting energy into something that is important, even when it's not easy. And to get used to this, we need to start with very, very small things. And this reminds me of another experience. Once I was in Amsterdam, I went to give two teachings in one day, so I took the flight in the morning, and as I was walking there, and at a certain point I was on a street that was full of shops that were like very fashionable, and as I was walking there, I saw those shops, and I felt quite sorry. Not that I couldn't buy those things, but I was sorry because I saw a level that was very high of fragility. Because what happens is the following. Let's imagine that I need to do a contract with happiness. The more articles, the more clauses I put in that contract, the more difficult it is to sign it. And so why did I have that thought in that context? Because I saw how trying to create a perfection where you just need one little detail that is out of place, that then the whole thing collapses. And so we try to create a whole experience where everything is about something to generate an inner state of well-being eventually. Where, if it's not like that, if that person doesn't talk to me like that, if that other thing is not like that, then already doesn't work. But actually, the simpler our contract is, the easier it would be to sign it. This brings me to another thing. Again, in the same week, I found myself in two situations. I was having dinner with some friends, that during the dinner they were doing some wine testing, so with various types of wines, without saying what the wine was and so on. I know because in this wine there is the wood here and that other thing and so on. And then I found myself one day at lunch with someone, like a friend that I know, that really likes wine but drinks whatever. You give him the cheapest wine and he's very happy. And there I asked myself, when one wants something like a beverage, like a wine or something, actually, what does he want? The wine or the feeling of pleasure? Actually, what we want is the feeling of pleasure. And among these two, who obtains more easily the sensation of pleasure? The one that is happy with any kind of wine, or the one that has a very evolved palate with all the details here and there? Is good, but there is this little thing, it's not really exactly like that, and maybe it will have some ecstatic moments, but then to recreate that moment of ecstasy, it's a big effort, other than expensive and so on. And so for that I had the thought that, okay, to have senses that are too sophisticated, then it tricks us. Like when I came to Italy, after I was living in India, then any olive oil was the same, but after a while, I know, because this one is like this, that one is like that, and then eventually you're less happy and less satisfied. This is to say that the attitude that we have changes the experience of life. And the same thing is about also our the fact of allowing ourselves that, okay, if there is a little effort, there is a little effort, and it's not the end of the world. And when we are able to get into a certain mindset where we have to put some effort and we just put it, we have to wait, we wait. And the reality is that when we are able to get into this way of being, then everything becomes more light. Because one of the things that are really heavy for us is that things are not as we think they should be. One example for me was when last summer we went to Mongolia. One of the most beautiful experiences for me was the experience of stepping on the bus and to sit and to ask, when do we arrive? I don't know. Will it be 2 hours? I don't know. Will it be 10? I don't know. You didn't know, but actually we didn't actually know. And so to allow ourselves to not have the control over time, to just leave without calculating the time of arrival and everything. We still haven't arrived. We were already supposed to be there. We haven't arrived. Why? An hour more has passed. That is, we project how things should be. We grasp to that as a solid reality, like as a sort of absolute truth of how it should go. And then when it's not like that, then it becomes a tension. So sometimes also just to let things go, let things flow, and not to be attached to how things should be. And about this, there is this aspect of allowing ourselves to face difficulties that are part of life, without having the idealized image that there shouldn't be difficulties. This, in some teachings, is called the effort similar to an armor. The patience and the effort similar to an armor, which refers to a soldier, like let's think about ancient soldiers, goes to a battle. Would they put on an armor? Why did they? To look like more charming? Or because he knew that he would get hit? One knows that, so I prepare myself. Because if the soldier leaves for war and then he says, no, the first hit I run away, I cannot take any hit, then he's not even able to get into it. When we start on a journey, we start with something, will there be difficulties on the way? Many difficulties. We start with a job, we start a relationship with someone, we start to meditate, whatever we want to do. Will there be difficulties along the way? Absolutely, yes. When we, at the start, at the beginning, we already forecast difficulties. When they come, they're much less heavy, rather than if we had an idealized image that there should be none. And it's crazy how it works. So, when you get ready for the worst, eventually, the worst is not so bad. When you expect that everything should be perfect, then that first little thing that it's not how it should be, then it's a tragedy. And so, that part that we saw yesterday, that is about putting constancy, effort into what one desires, and to put aside doubts. Actually, here the word doubt is about uncertainty. Because doubts, in the sense that I know that I don't know and I want to know more, that's a beautiful thing. Doubt here is related to uncertainty. So, should I go or not? Is it like that or not? And so to have this constancy, this effort, demands also an act of courage. Remembering ourselves that courage means that there is a goal, there is an obstacle, and there is the trust of being able to overcome that obstacle to reach that goal. So I said, a goal in front of me. Will there be difficult moments? Yes. Will I be able to overcome them? Yes.
E Atisha ci
And
guida.
Atisha guides us in the following part. Okay, first he gives a direction, like saying, put aside all doubt and hesitation, take delight in earnest practice, abandon entitled lethargy, dullness and laziness, abandon the attachment to the sleepiness, to that state of heaviness. And here there is also an interesting thing, that the more one does it, the more we do it, the more we are able to do it. I don't know if you ever realized. When we spend a long time when we don't do anything, then cannot find the time to do anything. One that is used to do a lot, then finds the time to do a lot. Sometimes it happened to me to talk with someone that at my eyes, like, he was not doing anything, and then he said, I don't have time. Okay, but like, what are you doing in the meanwhile? Then there are people that have a lot of things to do and are able to do more and more. And this is really a strange rule. Like, the more you do, the more you're able to do. The less you do, the less you're able to do. And so the more we are in that state of lethargy, of sleepiness, of slowness in things and so on, the more difficult it will become to do things. So here we need to maintain presence, we need to maintain calmness, but to act, to move ourselves. This is another important thing. And exert yourself constantly with enthusiasm. The next point is a very important point in the times that we live. Was always important, but today even more, according to me.
왕부 고남 딱 두숨 닌센 투숨 양다양 심기 규라 딱 버차 trendan shishing pak yöpes tramite la consapevolezza, la vigilanza,
with mindful recollection, vigilance and conscientiousness.
la vigilanza e l'attenzione. La parola attenzione qua
The
magari sarebbe più corretto tradurre
part mindful recollection, conscientiousness. Okay, in Italian is different in translation. Here we have three characteristics. The first one is awareness or memory, mindful recollection. That's translated like that. Vigilance and conscientiousness.
Ricordati di sorvegliare costantemente.
Guard the doors of your senses at all times. First of all, conscientiousness. As we said yesterday, conscientiousness is our capacity of being aware of what we already know, but that usually we forget about. So, in the previous verse, he said, abandon any doubt, find your direction, and follow it with determination. Now, he said, okay, remember yourself of that direction. Because we have the tendency that there is the moment of enthusiasm, and then we maybe listen to our master, we talk with a friend, we read a book, something happens, and there is that enthusiasm. I need to get out of samsara. And then a few minutes pass, and then there is like a football match. Okay, no, samsara ended up who knows where. Then when his football team loses, then the samsara and the suffering comes back again. So what happens is, here is about the importance of maintaining on our awareness, the importance of, for example, the preciousness of this life, of mortality, the goal that I have in this life.
La preziosità di questa vita è
The preciousness of this life is one of the most important things, because if we don't have conscientiousness of the preciousness of this life, our tendency is to waste it.
Sprecarla
To waste it how? Looking for comfortable survival. But we have an opportunity that is very, very difficult to obtain. Without getting into a lot of details, this opportunity that we have is made out of three things. The minimum necessary materially, who guides us correctly along a healthy path, and the desire to walk.
Minimo necessario materialmente, senza
Minimum necessary materially, without getting too long in this, it means
dover preoccuparsi a tutti gli effetti
that we shouldn't worry uh, for our survival.
avere da mangiare.
So to have food.
Sampo, cosa fai? Cosa fai qui? Ok, scusate. Quindi aver da mangiare,
So to have food,
avere la possibilità
to have the possibility of being in a place where one feels safe.
E quando noi guardiamo il
And
mondo
when
che ci
we
circonda,
check, when we look at the world around us,
è la maggioranza o la
is
minoranza
it the
delle
majority
persone che non si
or
devono
the minority
preoccupare
of
con la
people
propria
that don't have to
sopravvivenza?
worry about their survival?
È una minoranza mica piccola.
It's a minorance, not even a small one.
E qualcuno
A
direbbe, no, io mi devo
minority.
preoccupare della mia sopravvivenza, perché se io smetto di
And
lavorare,
no, but I need to worry about my survival, because if I stop working, then I will not have any food.
ok,
Yes,
ma quanto
but
spesso hai
how
avuto la paura
often
di non aver da mangiare?
were you actually afraid
Quanto spesso è
of not having
capitato
food?
di
How often did it occur to
svegliarsi al
you to wake up in the
mattino e non
morning
aver da mangiare?
and to not have
Non perché
food,
dimenticato
not
di fare
because you
la spesa.
forgot to buy the groceries?
Non spesso, immagino.
Not often, I imagine.
E purtroppo c'è una
And
quantità
unfortunately, there is
enorme di
an
persone
enormous
che vivono su
quantity of
questo
people
pianeta,
that live on this
si
planet
svegliano
that
al
wake up in
mattino
the
senza
morning
avere la certezza
without having the certainty of what they will have for food, as food,
o
or
che hanno la paura che
that
gli
they
possa
are
cadere una
afraid
bomba in
that the
testa,
bomb may fall on their heads,
o diverse altre
or
incertezze.
other kinds of
Quello che accade è
uncertainties.
questo.
What happens is this,
Qua vado a
and
dilungarmi un
here
po', però
I
apriamo un
go a
argomento
little bit
importante.
long on this, but we open an important subject.
C'è una parte del nostro
There is
cervello
a part of our brain that has a very important function
che, da quello che ho capito,
that, from what I
che non
understood,
è il mio ambito
that it's not my
di
field
conoscenza
of knowledge,
principale,
main
viene
field of
chiamato
knowledge,
il sistema
is called
reticolare ascendente,
the ascendant
una parte del cervello teoricamente qua dietro, così ho capito.
reticular system, a
Qual è
part
la
of the brain
funzione
that
di
is
questo
here in the
sistema
back.
reticolare
So what is the function of this
Discernere
system? To
quali
discern
informazioni
what
vengono a galla nella
information
nostra
should
consapevolezza
come to
e quali
surface
vengono
to our awareness and what are
E
left
ci
out.
sono vari studi con
And there
numeri
are
diversi,
many studies with
poco
various
cambia per
numbers,
noi.
but little changes for us.
Uno di questi studi
One of these
dice
studies
che in ogni
says that in
secondo
any second
arrivano ai nostri
to our
sensi
senses
11
come
milioni di
11
informazioni
millions of information
che riguardano
that
non riguardano le informazioni interne,
it's not
riguardano gli
about
oggetti
internal
esterni
information
sensoriali.
but external objects of the
Riguardano le nostre
senses. So it's not
emozioni,
about our
eccetera.
emotions and so on, it's
Quello
just
che noi vediamo,
about
sentiamo,
what we
tocchiamo,
see, touch, hear, the external things.
e di questi 11
And of
milioni
these
noi
11
siamo
million,
consapevoli,
we are aware,
se ci va bene,
if
di 50.
we are lucky, of 50.
Quindi stiamo parlando di circa
So we're
50
talking
su
50
11 milioni.
on 11
E la
million.
cosa che personalmente
And the thing that personally like leaves me
è
stupefied is
50
that
che noi siamo
50, of
consapevoli
which we are
su 11 milioni,
aware
quello che
on
noi chiamiamo
11 million,
realtà.
is what we call a reality.
Perché tutto il resto
Because all the rest
arriva, ma noi non
arrives
siamo
to us, but we're not aware.
Che cosa determina
What determines
quale 50 possono
what 50, what is the 50 that comes to the surface? Okay, let's imagine that 50 people can enter this room,
nella vita, no,
but
al
not like
secondo.
in life, in any second.
E fuori ci sono
And then
11
outside there are
milioni che vogliono
11
entrare.
million that want to get in.
C'è qualcuno alla porta
And there is someone at the door
che dice tu entri,
that says you can get in and you don't.
ha un grande potere,
Very big power.
Però questo qualcuno
This
ha delle
someone
regole da
has
seguire,
some
un capo,
rules that has to
qualcuno
follow.
che
It's
dà
like
autorità, di ordini.
he has a boss, someone that
Quali sono le
gives
priorità che
him
questo-
orders. So
questa persona che ha la porta, che è il sistema reticolare
this person at the door is the ascendant reticular system. The first priority that he has is about
Se io ho
physical
fame,
needs. So if
la
I'm
mia
hungry,
priorità è
then my priority would be
trovare da
to
mangiare.
find some food.
Se io ho dei bisogni
If
fisiologici,
I have
devo fare
physiological
pipì,
needs like to pee,
qual è la priorità?
then what is the priority?
È quella, no?
that one. Like as I said recently, it happened to me in the days that I was reflecting on this, that I went to give a conference on the other side of the lake. I was going to Milan, and I was with people in the car, and we were talking about very nice things. Then at a certain point, I really needed to go to the bathroom, and the conversation was beautiful and deep. But then at a certain point, I couldn't follow it anymore because I needed to pee. There was nothing to do, and then so Alaura was driving and I said, just please find like a place to stop anything, because here. And then we found like a sort of area on the side, and then the mind freed to get back to the conversation of before.
Quello che succede è che quando abbiamo dei
And so what happens is that when we have physical needs of survival also even stronger, the priority of the ascendant reticular system of the information that we are aware of then are those that are about our survival and our physical needs. Once that our physical needs are not covered, then we have a really hard time to be able to see anything else. And so for that, like a person that doesn't have food, cannot protect himself from cold or heat, a person whose needs are not covered, like primary needs, will have a really hard time, unless, apart from some exceptions, will manage to have the necessary space to go deeper, to observe oneself, to observe his conduct, to check the emotions, to open mind to other things. Is this clear?
Seconda priorità.
Second priority, after the physical needs, we have emotions.
Una persona che è in uno stato di
A
rabbia,
person that is in a state of anger,
chi fa entrare dalla porta?
who
Le cose che vanno bene e le cose che vanno male.
makes enter through the door the things that
Male. Io mi
are
sento
bad.
rabbia,
So I
io
feel
cosa
anger,
vedo?
what
Le
do I
cose
see? The things that
giustificano
justify my anger.
Io sono felice,
I'm,
vedo le cose
I'm
che vanno
happy,
bene.
then I see the things that are well.
Sono triste, vedo
I'm
le
sad,
cose che vanno
I see the
male,
things that are
eccetera.
bad, and so on.
Quindi
And
chi
so,
dà gli ordini
who gives
a questo
orders
sistema
to
reticolare
this
ascendente,
ascendant reticular system
chi gli dà l'ordine di priorità,
that
chi entrare, chi
give
non
him the
entrare
order of
nella nostra
priority,
coscienza di tutto quello che noi
to
vediamo e percepiamo in ogni
the
momento,
order of entrance in our consciousness of what we perceive in every moment,
le nostre
are our physical
emozioni,
needs,
e poi ci
our
sono i nostri
emotions, then we have
desideri.
our desires. Me, what do I want?
Quando noi mettiamo in
When
testa che vogliamo
we
qualcosa,
set ourselves
cominciamo ad aprirci a
that we
quella
want
cosa.
something, then we start to open up to that
Possiamo
something.
fare tanti esempi,
And we can give many examples.
no? Io ho fatto sempre l'esempio
Yeah, I
della cabina
was
di
given the
trasformazione.
example of the
Quando
transformation
ci hanno detto che dovevamo fare la
cabin,
cabina di trasformazione qui al centro,
that when they told us
e
that we
l'ingegnere
had
mi ha
to
spiegato
do
quanto
a
grande
transformer
doveva essere,
cabin, and the
quanto
engineer
costava.
explained me
Ma perché noi?
that we should build it
Qualcuno a casa
and
c'ha
how
una cabina
expensive
di
it was.
trasformazione.
And then I asked, but why should we do it?
Perché noi
I
dobbiamo fare
mean,
una cabina di
why do we have to do it?
trasformazione? Non ce l'ha
And
nessuno.
no one has it.
Lunga storia breve.
Long story short, we did it. It's next to the parking. It's
14 metri.
long, like it's 13 meters long, and it's even like
Perché? Non perché volevo,
covered with
deve essere così.
rocks. Not because I wanted like that, but because yeah, it has to be like that.
Però,
Only the wild
al
pigs
di là
can
di
see it
quello,
at night.
quello che
But aside
succede
from
è
that, what happens is
un
that
giorno,
one day,
mentre ero in mezzo a questa
as I
storia delle
was
cabine
in
di
the midst of
trasformazione,
this story of transformer
faccio il
cabins,
tragitto
I go
Albagnano,
from
Malpensa,
Albagnano to
da
Malpensa
solo in macchina,
just
e
by
comincio
myself
a
in
vedere
the car,
queste
and I start
cabine
to
di
see these
trasformazione
transformer
dappertutto,
cabins
come se fosse
everywhere,
un fungo.
as if they were mushrooms.
No? Dopo una giornata
After a
di
day
sole,
of
quella
sun,
pioggia,
after
questi
rain,
funghi
these
dappertutto.
mushrooms everywhere.
E io vi assicuro
And
che i
I
giorni
assure,
prima che avevo fatto quella strada, quelle
and
cabine non
the
c'erano.
days before, like I'm sure those cabins were not there,
Sono
but I'm
convinto.
really like convinced.
Cosa è successo?
What
Ho
happened
aperto la mia
is
mente
that
a
I
quella
opened my
realtà
mind to that reality,
e ho cominciato a...
and I started to see it.
Okay. Quindi quando noi diamo
And
importanza a
so, when
qualcosa,
we give
apriamo la
importance to
nostra mente
something,
a
we open our
qualcosa, la
mind
nostra mente
to
comincia
something,
anche a
then
aprire per vedere
also
ciò che è relativo
our
a
mind
ciò.
starts to see what is related to that.
Perché la nostra capacità
Because
di
our capacity
elaborazione
of
dati è molto limitata.
data elaboration is very limited. And that's also where we can see the power of influence, of the information that we receive. If I continue to receive information that is about something of danger, what is the message that I give to my ascendant reticular system? There is a lot of danger, and I see it around.
Perciò, la prima
And
condizione
so, the first favorable condition that we have is the fact that we find ourselves in a context where we have the minimum necessary materially, and this is not little. There are those that don't have the minimum, but they just need to stop for like a month or 2 months and they're already left in a very, very difficult state. This has happened, for example, in Brazil. I saw that during COVID, the quantity of people that ended up on the street without having a roof on their heads, entire families, because they were living on the basis of their monthly wage. So many activities closed, they had no salary, they couldn't pay the rent, they couldn't buy food, entire families, but so many of them. And the numbers are huge when we see when we look at the people that live like this. And then there are the people that, yes, they have food, but they have to work so much every day just in order to survive. And then there are many others that have the minimum necessary materially, have a situation that is quite good, but anyway, they are slaves of power, of pleasure, of money, of image. And to them, even the idea that just an inner world exists seems like fantasy. The fact that one is not a victim of the world, but that we can work on ourselves and there is a process, it seems like a foolish thing. When one is slave of having more power, of having more money, more beauty, more fame, more recognition, and so on. And here there are also those that can have a lot materially, but anyway is inside of this cycle. So if we look, how many in this world, just like as a general thing, how many of those that have the minimum necessary materially and have someone that can guide them on a real path of inner transformation, independently of their religion or not, and doesn't have to be like someone that has a master or a guide that is with them every day, but that they have a direction to follow. And then the third condition is to want to follow it, to want to put oneself into that spiritual path and to grow, to face one's own shadows and to develop qualities. We can just think about the people that we know in our family, in our working context, and so on. The percentage of people that have these three conditions, are they the majority or minority? I hope the majority, but I don't think so. And so, to have these three conditions is not easy. Buddha Shakyamuni described it that having these three conditions is like the possibility of a turtle that lives at the bottom of the ocean and goes to the surface to catch air like once every 100 years and is deaf and blind. And on the surface there is a golden ring that floats. What is the probability that when the turtle goes out, then puts her head inside of the golden ring? This is the possibility that we have of having these conditions. And also, this is also about, inside of this possibility, there is also the fact of having 5 senses that are in good state, which doesn't mean that who is, for example, blind cannot follow a spiritual path, doesn't mean that, but anyway there is a greater difficulty.
Perciò noi abbiamo queste
And so we have these conditions.
sono rare, ma perché sono preziose?
Why? They are rare, but why are they precious? Because they allow us to cultivate what by all means can sustain a state of happiness, a state of well-being, a state of peace for ourselves and the others. When we stop for a moment and we reflect on this, and we really do it,
diciamo, a me mi viene da dire
to
wow,
me it comes to say, wow, how special, I cannot waste this opportunity that I have. But often we forget. It's a bit like once that I hurt my ankle and I had a hard time to walk for months. The day that I started walking again, I told myself, wow, how beautiful. It's not so obvious to walk well. Or when I had a diagnosis for a disease of the eyes that it never developed, called keratoconus. When I had this diagnosis, I looked and there was my aunt that passed away this year, that she had keratoconus and she transplanted her cornea for 3 times. Then I thought, okay, my aunt is not doing so good. Genetically, maybe there is something. Is there a possibility that this disease can develop and that I will have serious problems with my sight? Yes. So how beautiful that I can see well. There are many years that I check every year, and also recently I checked and everything is good. But the point is that it's not taken for granted that we are here, that we are able to see, that we are able to listen, that we are able to eat, that we can be serene. It's not for granted, all of this.
E questa consapevolezza di dire wow,
And this awareness of being able to say how beautiful that I have this opportunity, it's important to be able to maintain this awareness also when it's not there. So it's not that we have to realize the importance of something only when that is missing. And that is an example of conscientiousness. And when we talk about a spiritual path, one of the first type of conscientiousness that is necessary is about the preciousness of this life, so about these 3 conditions. Then there is the conscientiousness of the certainty of death, so the certainty of the moment of death, where death is not a taboo. The problem is not dying, because as we saw with the kids during the summer camp, if there is a problem, then it's because there is a solution. If there is no solution, then it's because it's a fact. And death, is it a problem or a fact? It's a fact. Even if sometimes I hear, if I had to die, and I ask myself, what alternative do you have?
è più probabile
But is it more likely that one says, no, if I had to die, then when I will die? It seems like it brings bad luck to say when I will die. But the reality of facts is that death is the most normal thing. The problem is not dying. The problem is living badly. And this simple awareness changes a lot.
E poi morire male è un
And then to live badly, yes, it's a problem because we can live, we can die well. We can live well and die well. And so to have this awareness that this life is precious, I don't know how long this opportunity will last, and so I need to use it at my best. This is another type of awareness, conscientiousness. Then there is conscientiousness that is about the line that we want to carry on in our life. For example, to cultivate respect, gratitude, love, to respect life and to not kill, to respect truth and to not lie. There are many things that at a certain point we say, no, this is the path that I want to follow. And so to remember ourselves that and to keep it at the surface of our awareness means to have this conscientiousness. And together with this conscientiousness, then we need awareness and vigilance. Conscientiousness and Vigilance are very similar. So with the conscientiousness, I remember what I already know, and I keep it afloat. And what could be translated as memory is our capacity, or mindful recollection, is our capacity of maintaining our mind on what our goal is, on what we want. So one of the examples that is given, is that if I take the car to go from A to B, let's give an easy example for everyone. I go from here to Milan. I take the road. Then what happens if along the way I forget that I'm going to Milan? Then it could end up, could be that I forget, but usually I'm used to going to Alessandria. And then at a certain point there is the crossroad and I follow for Alessandria. Why? Because I forgot that I was going to Milan. As I believe that it may have already happened to some of you to have like a route to go to work every day, and then you had to go somewhere else, but then you ended up at your office or something like that. I know people that, I don't know, they had a father that never brings like the child to school, then one day he has to do it, then he has like a call with the office and he forgot about the child in the car, so he gets at the office and he opens the door and then he's like, okay, what do I do now? And there were also tragic cases also, and also, but also funny stories with this. Then one is late for work, and it's worse than to skip the meeting, than to skip school, so then he brings the child at office, and so on. So in this case, one forgot about where he was going, and this is lack of memory, here translated as awareness, or mindful recollection, the presence on what I'm doing, on where I'm going. Vigilance is the attention on what I'm doing in the present moment. So I remember that I have to go to Milan, but along the way I don't realize that I take the way to Alessandria. And then at a certain point I tell myself, why am I not getting to Milan? Because I took the wrong exit. I knew where I wanted to go, but I didn't realize where I was going. Vigilance is our capacity of observing our own action as we are doing them, to observe what we are doing, what we are saying, what we are thinking, to have this vision of ourselves. And so I bring to the surface what I know, conscientiousness. I give myself a clear direction, mindful recollection or awareness, and I am careful about what I'm doing, that I'm not going off-road, so vigilance. With this, guard the door of your senses at all times. What are the doors of our senses? Eyes, our hearing, our nose, smell, our mouth, the taste, our skin, the touch. Then there is also the part of mental images, memory of our mind, but let's start from external senses. To guard the doors of our senses, which doesn't mean that I keep my eyes closed and I just open them sometimes, but I'm watchful of what enters or not. Because what enters through the doors of the senses, once that has entered, stays inside and has an effect on us. It's not possible that we take some information through what we see, hear, touch, and so on, and that information doesn't have an effect inside of ourselves. It's not possible. And so, we should guard the doors of our senses, which means to be careful about what I see, what I listen to, what I touch, what I eat. Which doesn't mean to live in a paranoid way, but to make choices in a way that is aware. Because sometimes I feel that we lack the awareness of how much we are influenced and conditioned by what we see, what we hear, and so on. I don't know how much awareness we have of this.
Ok. Basta vedere
We can just see
nella nostra società
in our society there are three main taboos. There are many, but three main ones. Well, I don't know if they're main or not, but anyway, there are three taboos that come to my mind. And it's absurd because on one hand it's a taboo, and on the other hand, it's something that is extremely present in our life, but in an unhealthy way. We have the taboo by excellence, which is death, because eventually, yeah, we have a hard time to talk about death. When there is someone that is about, very sick, we
morirai.
have difficulty saying, look, we don't know what to do with you, probably you're going to die soon. We have a really hard time to face that. That's a huge taboo. But since when we were little, we just take like a video game in your hands, like people die continuously, like it's continue like killing here and killing there.
Guardi un
You
film.
look at some movie, how many people die in an action movie? Like an enormous quantity. Just try once to take an action movie and to count the people dying in the movie. We open up the news, how many people are dying? How often you hear like people died here, people died there, like a lot. So on one hand, death is something that is present in every moment. On the other hand, it remains a taboo. Then we have the taboo of sex.
Che addirittura per
Even in order to sell like some toothbrush, use sensuality and the sexual part.
poi non si riesce a parlare con i propri figli
And
adolescenti
then you cannot talk with your
per cercare di dare
teenager child, son, to give like a healthy sexual education. And here, also one of the non-different problems that we are living today,
è che spesso accade, per
and
fortuna
that
non sempre,
is that often happens, fortunately not always, that young teenagers get in touch with the sexual part through a part of internet and mostly through pornography, having as a point of reference, as a way of relating that is unhealthy, both to oneself and towards the others. And a while ago, a friend, jokingly but also saying it very seriously, she said, Lama, thinking about the youth, let's make the porno Dharma. Why? We need to give a more healthy education.
però è un tabù.
But it's a taboo.
Già la parola porno
The word porno Dharma, we imagine like, what will people think? Ah, the Lama is an heretic, what is he saying?
È un tabù o no?
Is it a taboo or not?
Però dall'altra parte è
But
presente.
on the other hand, it's present everywhere. You talk about it in every way. It's like something that is extremely present in many aspects of our society, but it's a taboo.
E poi ci sono i soldi.
And then there is money.
Che anche i soldi, tutto è per
Also
soldi,
money,
poi
like
quelle
everything
cose
is for
banali,
money, for everything you have to pay, but then you have a hard time to face it, you have a hard time to talk about it with transparency. That's not the taboo that we have in our society.
Perciò quello che
And
accade
so,
con questo è
what
che
happens with this is that
ci sono cose che
there are things that we don't realize
ma le informazioni
of,
che noi
but
riceviamo
the information that we receive
continuano a lavorare
continue to
dentro di
work inside of ourselves.
noi. Abbiamo parlato di tre cose:
We talked about three things:
morte,
death,
sesso e soldi.
sex, and money.
Le informazioni che noi riceviamo
The information that we often receive
della vita
are often about these three
sono
fields
necessariamente molto
of life and are not necessarily very healthy.
Però tutto quello che io ricevo
But everything that
ha
I
un
receive
impatto
has an impact on me.
Io la volta che questo è stato molto
And
chiaro
the time that this was very obvious for me was when I was in São Paulo,
per caso
where by
ero
chance
nel giorno
I
a San
was
Paolo in cui hanno
there
applicato
in
la
a day
legge
where they
sulla
applied
città.
a law called Clean
E
City.
fino a quel giorno
And
la città
up to
era
that day,
tappezzata
the
di
city
pubblicità,
was
cartelloni
covered by
pubblicitari enormi, di
huge
outdoor.
advertising banners, outdoor banners.
Sono i cartelloni pubblicitari
They,
enormi.
they are
Io non
really
li ho mai visti
huge.
tanto
I've never seen them
pubblicità
so
in
much
Italia, mai
inside of Italian cities.
proprio
They're really like, I don't know, maybe they're like 4 meters high and 6 meters wide. At a certain point, they were forbidden inside of the city of São Paulo. And I remember the day that the evening before they were there, and during the night they removed them, and they were not there anymore. And the strange thing was that, without thinking about it, as I was going around the city, then I had more space. I had the feeling of having more inner space. Because everything that comes to me takes some space inside of me. And so we cannot blame the world and say, because those that make advertising, because here and there. But when I have the remote in my hands, then I can choose whether to turn the TV on or not, or what channel should I choose, whether I stay with my phone scrolling, that sort of meditative state. Because we have one pointed mind in that moment. We are not thinking about anything else. Or to take a book. A while ago, a friend in Brazil, told me, "Look, Lama, finally I was able to follow your advice. Last time that I was in Brazil, I closed all my social media accounts. Okay, for work I need to do something, but on a personal level I closed them completely. Then after a few days, then I realized that I started reading again. I had time to read. Because time is not about the time of the clock, it's about the inner space that we have. So here, when Atisha says, guard the doors of the senses at all times, it means let's try to be aware of how we use our sight, our hearing, what to watch, what to listen to. And this changes life. If we had to give a simple solution for many problems of the modern times, it would be read more and watch less. Not like read text messages. Like read a book. Allow yourself after a while also to read difficult things. But anyway, require to reflect and to go deeper in things. But the capacity of reading is decreasing in a incredible way. And I know that at this moment in our planet there are many types of crises. But the crisis of attention is something that worries me a lot. Not like worried like all day thinking about it, but when I think about it, then I tell myself it's very serious, because if we don't have attention, then we don't have presence, then we lose our capacity of discernment and to take aware choices, and we become more and more like leaves blown away by the wind, carried here and there. And so I turn off my phone, and as a minimum, to guard the doors of our senses, a practical advice that changes life. Could seem like a trivial thing, but makes a big difference in the times that we live in, is to remove all the notifications on our phone. Not just some, all of them. To turn off the notifications. What does this mean? That as I'm doing something, then there isn't that something, or there's something that enters without asking permission. And it makes the difference. I go to read something, I watch something, what do I read, what do I watch, how do I use my speech? All of this is about guarding the doors of our senses, because it's through our senses that we activate one thought or another, and so this is very important. When, for example, a person would like to take to go on a path of a deeper meditation, a path of concentration, path of inner search and meditation that is very deep, one of the first things that you should do is to remove completely any object of perception that is not necessary. So traditionally what happens is that the practitioner closes himself off somewhere, like in a mountain hut, in a cave somewhere. In Tibet, I saw a place where there is this tradition that the meditator goes inside of this mini
senza finestra con un
mini room with no window, with a hole down and a hole up, and then when he enters, they close him from outside, they seal him inside, and he stays there for 3 years in the darkness to meditate.
O uno sa cosa fa, o se no una
Either one knows what he's doing, otherwise it's a terrible torture. Then a time comes where that is opened from outside and it goes out. But what happens is that in order to be able to give more room for some inner parts of ourselves, we need to remove the tension from the outer senses. To understand this a little bit better, we can just see how our senses, and our mind is one of them, functions in a way that the more the objects of the sense is gross, is intense, the less sensitive is the sense. So if there is a lot of light, the sight is not very sensitive. If there is a lot of noise, hearing is not sensitive. If one is used to have a lot of physical contact, then the skin becomes less sensitive. If one is used to eating a lot of spicy food, then our palate becomes less sensitive, and so on. When we start to remove the objects of our senses, then we start to become more sensitive. There is less light, then sight becomes more sensitive to light. The fewer the noise, the more my hearing becomes sensitive, and so on. And the less information I receive, the more my mind becomes sensitive. And so, in the same way that a more refined, more sensitive hearing is able to perceive minimum sounds, things that usually wouldn't have been perceived, a more sensitive mind is able to see part of itself and part of the world that otherwise wouldn't have seen. And it's here that one needs to guard the doors of the senses. And that the advice that I believe that it's important for all of us in this time that we live in, this time, is not to shut down completely the doors of the senses. We're not ready for this, also will not be good for us. But to choose to eliminate the information that is not necessary.
È un po' come mi è capitato che qualcuno
It happened to me that someone wanted to tell me something, and then just started telling it, and then he says, "I know better if I don't say it." I don't know if this happened to you. Usually, then it becomes like, but now you started, don't leave me with the curiosity, tell me. I'm a curious person by nature, but I learned to say, okay, like, you don't want to tell me, better for me. Then usually, when one says it like that, then the other person feels like telling it. Then, okay, like, you don't want to tell me, then I have less things to think about, less things that I put inside of myself. I need to have space inside of myself, to have more clarity. I need silence to be able to perceive the more subtle sounds. And among these subtle sounds of our mind, what is there? Our intuition. When we have the noise of strong emotions, we cannot hear it. When there is the noise of too much information, we cannot hear it. And so, I am not talking about the vow of silence, but the commitment to not say what is not necessary. That already changes a lot. Not talking about the vow of not hearing, but the vow of not listening to what is not necessary. So I want to watch the news, great, because I want to be aware of what is going on around. I take some news and I read it from the beginning to the end. I try to understand it in a deep way. I try to read the same thing from various sources to make my vision deeper instead of just remaining in sort of entertainment. So I do it with awareness. And this changes a lot. And here, one of the things that gets together with this when we're talking about is guarding the doors of our senses. It also means to not allow ourselves to get into automatisms.
Un'abitudine
A
virtuosa
virtuous habit that is well, if that becomes automatic, is fine. But very often we get into an automatism. We do something because it's an habit to do it. We talk in a certain way because it's an habit to talk like that. And sometimes we are part of absurd things. But it's normal.
Ieri ho fatto l'esempio
Yesterday I gave the example, as we were in the woods, of plastic. The quantity of microplastic that we absorb is huge and it hurts, it's harmful.
La cosa che a me più mi
The
preoccupa
thing that worries me the most as I see this is that one of the places in our body where the microplastic is deposited is in our brain. And one of the effects that apparently this brings, according to some studies, is senile dementia and Alzheimer. And when I think about myself, the part that I absolutely don't want to degenerate is my mind. And so when I see a plastic bottle and healthy mind, there is a relation among the two. Which one do I choose? Healthy mind. And so bye-bye plastic bottle. Bye-bye plastic glass. Bye-bye food plastic container, and especially with also hot things. This is also about not getting into some automatism. Also the way that we buy things. When I spend some money and I buy something, then I get into a mechanism. I'm part of a mechanism. I can buy in an automatic way because anyway it's what it's done in general, or I can observe me in what cycle I enter. I am part when I buy in a certain way. Do I want to be part of that cycle or not?
cercare di prendere le
Try to take decisions in our life with awareness. Awareness also means the cognition, the knowledge of causes and results. I do this, then it participates to that other thing. Do I want or not?
mangio questo ha un
I
effetto.
eat this, it has an effect on me, and so on. And so, the advice that Atisha gives us here, and here we could spend days talking about this, is to live life with awareness and to not enter into automatisms.
Mi viene in mente una delle questioni che è un altro un po' tabù della nostra società.
Comes to my mind another subject that is quite taboo in our society, in the sense that it's something that we talk about, but we cannot really talk about.
Io anni fa mi trovai
Me,
in Brasile a Budapest.
some years ago, I was in Brazil,
Eravamo
and we were with a friend, and he brought me to do like a short trip on the boat. And as I was doing it with him, then he showed me a spot where there was a beach, and he said, there is a house, there is a building. Look, this is the place where they brought slaves. The ships with slaves will get here. And this is also the place that even when slavery was abolished in Brazil, in a clandestine way, they still kept on bringing slaves here. And I heard about that story of the slaves here and there, and it's a very heavy part of the history of Brazil, also of Europe.
Però quando sei davanti a quel posto e tu vedi
But when you are in front of that place and you see that exactly that's where the slaves were brought, that impressed me. And a thought that came to my mind was that at the time where slavery was normal, in Brazil for example, the, the people that had slaves at home, if we will know them, we will meet them, were they all mean people?
erano persone
Were they mean people that had slaves at home?
Se oggi qualcuno
If
c'ha
someone today has a slave at home and
va bene?
and the whip,
No,
everything, would you say that it's fine or
Ma
not?
cosa era successo all'epoca?
But at the
Era
time, it was
normale.
normal.
Normale non vuol dire
Normal
sano.
doesn't mean healthy.
Normale non vuol dire che
Normal
va
doesn't
bene.
mean that it's fine.
Per esempio, noi
For
oggi nella
example,
nostra
we
società
today in our society,
trattiamo diversi
we
animali
treat
con un livello
various
di crudeltà
animals with a level of cruelty that is tremendous,
ed è
and
normale.
it's normal.
Io non sto entrando
So I'm not
neanche
getting into
nell'ambito della discussione se
the
mangiare carne o
discussion
non
whether
mangiare
we
carne,
should
non
eat
sto entrando in
meat or
quello,
not. I'm not getting into that.
perché per me il problema
Because
della
for me the
carne
problem of
non
meat
riguarda il
is
fatto
not
che
about the
l'animale
fact
debba morire
that the
perché
animal
uno
has to
possa
die
mangiare la
so
carne.
that one can eat meat.
Il problema
The
maggiore
greater
riguarda il
problem is
modo in
about
cui
the
l'animale
way
viene
that the
cresce.
animal grows and live.
Quello è il
That is
principale
the
problema che
main
io vedo oggi come oggi.
problem that I see as of
E noi
today.
lo trattiamo come
And we
se
treat
fosse
it
una cosa
as if it was the most normal
normale,
thing.
fa parte, tanto
It's
non
part,
vediamo,
anyway, we
tanto
don't
non
see it,
vediamo.
anyway, it's not there.
Però è una forma di
But
violenza enorme.
it's a
Noi abbiamo
huge
campi di
form of violence. We have
concentramento
concentration camps everywhere
con questi
with
animali
these
rinchiusi in
animals
stati di
closed
violenza
up
pazzeschi.
in tremendous
Perché
states of
gli
violence,
animali come noi
because
non hanno solo
animals
bisogni fisici,
like
hanno
us
anche
don't have
bisogni
only
emozionali
physical needs, they also have emotional
che non
needs
vengono assolutamente
that are
visti
absolutely
e
not
rispettati.
seen and respected.
E noi lo viviamo con
And we live
normalità.
it
È
as
normale,
something normal.
ok? Proteggere le
To
porte dei
protect,
sensi,
to guard
non
the doors of
vivere
our
con
senses and to not
automatismi,
live with
riguarda anche
automatisms is also about
osservare gradualmente,
observing
non
gradually
lasciarsi
and to
entrare
not
in quelle che sono
let
queste
ourselves get
normalità,
into these
perché tanto è così.
so-called normalities,
Quindi io
because
faccio
anyway
le mie
it's like that. So I make my own choices.
Chiaro? Ok? E una cosa molto
And
importante
a very important
non è
thing
che quello
is
che
not
fa una
that
scelta diversa è cattivo.
the one that makes a different choice is mean, is bad.
Il punto qua è che
The
noi non
point here
dobbiamo
is
stare
that we
puntare il
shouldn't
dito
point the
contro gli
finger
altri.
at
Dobbiamo
the
essere
others, but we should
consapevoli
be
delle nostre
aware
scelte e
of our
responsabili noi
own
stessi.
choices enough and to be
Certe volte
responsible of
succede questo, no?
ourselves, because
Non si
sometimes it
vede, la
happens that
plastica fa male, invece
plastic is
piuttosto che
harmful, so
vedere la
instead of
plastica sto tutto il giorno a
stopping to buy
controllare i
plastic,
produtti
then I'm
plastici
checking all day long who's
e condannare
using
quelli che
plastic or not, and
bevono dei bicchieri di
condemning the
plastica,
people
no?
that drink from a plastic
Invece il punto
glass.
è quello.
But the point is not that.
E l'ultima parte del verso dice che si collega con questo, dice quindi tramite la consapevolezza, la
And so the last point here is that,
e la
okay,
coscienziosità, l'attenzione.
with mindful reconnection,
Ricordati di
vigilance, and
sorvegliare
conscientiousness, guard the
costantemente
doors
le
of your
porte del
senses
sia
at
di
all
giorno
times,
sia di notte,
again and
per più
again,
volte,
thrice by day
esamina
and by night,
ripetutamente il tuo
examine the
mentale.
continuum of your mind.
Non entrare negli automatismi a
To
un
not
primo
get
livello
into
uno
automatisms.
sorveglia il modo di interagire
On a first
fisicamente.
level, one guards the way that he
Sia
interacts
attenti nel
physically.
modo di interagire
So in the way
fisicamente con
that
il mondo,
we interact
che
physically with the
riguarda
world, that is about
dal nostro modo di comprare al nostro modo
starting
di guardare
from
l'altro, sorridere o
the way that we
meno,
look to
il
the
nostro
other,
modo
whether
di
we smile or not,
la nostra propria
whether we
condotta
steal or
sessuale,
not,
tutto
our
questo
sexual
riguarda la
conduct, the way
parte
we
fisica.
buy, all this is about the physical
Una volta
part.
che una consapevolezza riesce a
Once that we
direzionare la
have
parte
awareness and we are
fisica,
able to direct the physical
arriva
part,
la prossima
then
parte
it
che
gets
è
to
la
the
condotta
following
verbale.
part, which is the verbal conduct.
Come parlo,
How
di
I
avere
talk,
consapevolezza, saper
and to have
direzionare
awareness
bene le
and to be
nostre
able to
parole,
direct our
stare
words
attenti
well,
al
to
nostro
be
modo di parlare,
careful about the way we speak,
perché le parole
because
sono una delle
words
cose più potenti che esistono
are
al mondo. C'è solo una cosa più potente delle parole.
very powerful. There is only one thing that is more powerful than words, and that's thoughts.
Perciò dobbiamo stare molto
And
attenti
so
al modo
we
di
should be
parlare.
very careful
Ricordandoci che il
of
nostro
our way of
principale
talking, remembering that our main interlocutor
Quindi
is
non è solo
ourselves.
parlare verso gli altri, ma è anche il
So
parlare con se stessi.
it's not just talking with the others, but also talking to
E
oneself.
quando parliamo di questa consapevolezza,
And
che
when we
oggi
talk about this
è
awareness,
portato di moda il
that
termine
today is a bit
mindfulness, un giorno
in
qualcuno
fashion,
spiegherà perché in
about
italiano è necessario
mindfulness,
usare le parole
and
inglesi.
someone one day will also explain to me
Prima
why
o
in
poi
Italian we
qualcuno mi
need to
spiegherà
use
questo.
English words,
Per esempio la privacy.
for example, privacy.
Italiano come si
In
dice?
Italian, how would you say it?
Riservatezza, ma la legge della privacy. No? Comunque sia, quello che accade
Anyway, what happens
mindfulness
is
è
that,
andato di moda.
okay, mindfulness
Però
now is fashionable,
quello che è la
but
capacità di essere presente in ciò che faccio e di
what
osservare.
is that is the capacity of being present in what I'm doing and observing myself.
E all'interno di questo
And inside of this,
esiste uno dei luoghi più belli dove
one of
possiamo
the
arrivare,
most beautiful places where we can get to is when
manteniamo
we are
sempre una
able
parte di
to
vigilanza attiva.
always maintain a part of vigilance that is active. Sometimes it's more strong, sometimes it's more relaxed, that observes
E certe
our
volte
thoughts.
possiamo vedere
And
che
sometimes
c'è
you
un
can see
pensiero,
that there is
un'emozione
a
che sta
thought, an
cominciando
emotion
a
that is
sorgere,
starting to arise,
diciamo, no,
and we say, no, no,
non ho bisogno di
I don't
seguirlo,
need to
e
follow you.
permettiamo che
And
quel
we just
pensiero viene
allow
come un'onda.
that thought to come like a wave and to end.
La mente è come il mare,
Mind
il
is
pensiero
like
come
the
le
sea,
onde.
and the thoughts are
Le
like
onde vengono
waves,
dal
and the
mare
waves
e
come from the
ritornano.
sea and they go back to the sea.
Vedo un certo
I see a
pensiero, posso
certain thought,
scegliere
I
se
can
darlo,
choose whether to
seguirlo o meno.
follow it or not.
Viene quell'emozione,
An emotion
sorge,
comes,
non ho
arises,
bisogno di seguirlo,
I don't need to follow you,
passa.
and then it passes.
Viene un certo
A
pensiero,
certain thought
sorge, non
comes,
ho
it
bisogno di
arises,
seguirlo.
I don't need to follow you, and then it passes.
E questo è
And
osservare
this is
stare attenti
observing
con il proprio
and
continuum mentale. Quando si dice tre
guarding
volte di
our
giorno e
mental
di notte, vuol
continuum.
dire
When we
più o
say
meno sempre.
thrice, by day and night, it means more or less
In realtà
always.
questo tre volte di
Actually,
giorno e di
this
notte fa
thrice
riferimento che ci sono
refers to the
certi
fact that
orari
there are
del giorno
some
e della notte quando
times,
c'è un
a
cambio
day and night,
energetico.
when there is an
In
energetical
questi orari esiste
change,
una maggior
and at these
possibilità
times there is a
che
greater
certe
possibility
emozioni
that
forti
some
possano sorgere.
strong emotions may arise.
C'è l'alba,
There is dawn,
i quattro principali,
the four
facili da riconoscere è l'alba,
main ones that are
mezzogiorno,
easiest
mezzanotte.
to recognize are dawn,
Quindi questi sono i momenti in cui uno dovrebbe stare un po' più attento,
dawn,
perché c'è una
midday,
maggior possibilità,
sunset, and
perché
midnight.
si dice che
And
perché
these
con
are
il
the
cambio
times that
energetico anche
one should be more watchful,
fisicamente
also because
è un
physically
ritmo che può
there is
essere
an
più facile
energetical
che ci sono
change,
cambi di umore,
and so it's easier
cambi
that
di
there is
umore,
also a mood change.
quindi uno dovrebbe stare attento in quei
So
momenti.
one
Per
should
quello che
be
si dice tre
watchful
volte
at
di
those
giorno
times.
e di
So that's
notte,
why we say
osserva
thrice by day and by night,
attentamente, ossia
examine the
quando sono i
continuum of
momenti di
your mind.
maggior
So when there are the
tensione, di
times of
maggior
greater
possibilità di un
tension,
cambio
of greater possibility of a
di
change,
emozioni, eccetera,
of
stai
emotions and so
attento a
on,
vedere cosa
then
succede.
be careful of what is going on.
Però in altre parole è,
But in other words,
ogni tanto si dice, no?
sometimes
Pensi due
we
volte,
say
pensi tre volte prima di parlare.
think twice
Per me
before
pensi tre
talking.
volte prima di pensare.
For me is think twice before thinking.
Prima di stabilire un
So
pensiero
before
e dire è così,
establishing a thought and
segui
deciding that
quello.
it's like that and to follow it, okay, wait
Viene
a little
fuori un
moment.
pensiero, ok, lo
A
seguo o
thought
non lo
is
seguo.
coming out, okay, do I follow it or not? Okay, I follow
E
it.
questo non vuol dire
And
perdere
this
la
doesn't mean to
spontaneità,
lose
vuol
spontaneity.
dire prendere il
It
controllo
means
di
to
noi
take the
stessi.
control of ourselves.
Perché quando c'è un pensiero che
Because
è
when
buono,
there is a
che
thought
sorge,
that
io
is
con
good
tutta la
and that
spontaneità lo
arises,
permetto di andare avanti.
me with all the spontaneity
Quando c'è
allow
un
it
pensiero che non
to
va
go
tanto
on.
bene,
When there
che
is a thought
sorge,
that
io
is
non blocco quel
not
pensiero.
so fine
Io
and it
scelgo di non
rises,
seguirlo.
it's not that I block it, but
Sta
I
venendo
just choose to
quell'onda, io
not
non mi
follow
metto a
it. There is a
fermare
wave
l'onda, io
that is
lascio che
coming, I
l'onda
don't
ritorni al mare.
try to stop the wave, I let the wave go back to the sea.
È chiara la differenza?
Is the difference clear?
Quando noi cerchiamo di bloccare un
When we
pensiero,
try
cosa
to
succede?
block a thought, what happens
Prende
usually?
tutto il potere.
It takes all the power.
Invece quando il pensiero
But
sorge, noi
when
vediamo, non
the
vediamo di
thought
bloccare,
arises and then I say myself, I shouldn't identify
lasciamo
myself
che
with this
quel
thought,
pensiero venga,
then we
portiamo la
let
mente
it
da un'altra
come,
parte,
we bring the
un'altra parte,
mind
quel pensiero svanisce.
somewhere else also, and
Ovviamente
naturally the
all'infinito è
thought
possibile.
goes away, vanishes. Of course, it's
Meno
not
che
always
pratica
possible.
uno ha, più facile diventa.
The more we practice it,
Molto
the
spesso
easier
uno dice,
it
viene
becomes.
pensiero, non mi lascio trascinare, lascio che ritorni, poi uno cade insieme col pensiero.
Maybe one says, sees like the thought coming and then tells oneself, I will not myself to be, let myself to be dragged away by the thought, and then the wave just goes over oneself and it falls together with the thought. Here there is a fundamental point that Atisha brings to us, to have awareness of our thoughts. But if there is no consciousness and the direction that we want to go to, then it serves little, because to observe our own thoughts, having as a direction and intention to destroy the other, then eventually it serves very little. So to have awareness of our thoughts by having the conscientiousness, the superiority of my race or of my social status, and so the others are inferior and so on. If I have that state as something that I have as a direction and I observe my mind, and when I start to feel similar to the other, then I shouldn't feel like that. Remember that you are superior. Then that awareness is harmful. But it's fundamental, first of all, to have clarity about where we want to go. What are the characteristics of which I want to be aware? And then I observe my mind by day and night. I see in what direction it's going, and when necessary, I put it back on the right track. And it's for this that in order to do this well, one of the things that can help us, very shortly, is to make a list of what are the characteristics that I want to have. What we said yesterday also, what do I want to be? And so when we have this list, okay, do I want to be a patient person or a nervous person? Do I want to relate with the qualities or with the defects? Do I want to face difficult situations by letting myself be dragged away by the problem, or do I want to find a solution? So I describe point by point, not all of them because we're not able, but many of what I want to cultivate, of who I want to be, how I want to live life. And once that I have them, then that's the first part of this verse, to maintain mindful recollection and vigilance. And then I am watchful about my thoughts to check whether I'm going in that direction or not. To give an example, like I want to have a relationship of trust and respect with the people that I live with, that's the direction. Then I feel like fighting with them, I don't do it.
Questo perché? Perché quello che voglio è una
Why? Because what I want is a relationship of trust and love and so on. So I try to not act in an opposite way, because sometimes we may feel like it. Another example, I believe that in my relationships, mostly mid and long term, but also short term, truth is fundamental, and that lying is harmful and that it brings nowhere. That it makes us sick. We can spend hours talking about how much lies are harmful. So I find myself in front of a situation where it's easier to lie. What do? I don't lie. Why? Because for me, truth is important. And so, to maintain the direction, and then to be careful that with our physical, verbal and mental actions, we maintain and follow that direction. And here there is everything. If we are able to do this, there is everything. And it's interesting because Atisha starts from the macro and then bit by bit gets into the micro, the details. So he starts by giving like wide guidelines of the ideal conduct, and then starts to get into the details. Already the next verses are more simple about the details, like to proclaim your own failings and to not look for faults in others. Starts to get into more specific things, but here there is a more general conduct.
Quindi
And
prendiamo a
so
cuore questi
we
consigli
take
di Atisha,
close to
così
our
come
heart
validi
this
tutti
advice from
i
Atisha,
sai come
and
sono
because
valide le
as they were
parole.
valid in the 11th century, they are still valid today,
Cerchiamo di ricordarceli e di
and let's try to
portare
remember them
veramente a cuore.
and to really take them to heart.
Facciamo le nostre dediche.
Now let's make our dedications.
Lame kutse rapten chi namkar trinle chokchur gepa dang losan tempe drume sasum ki drove munsel tatu ne gyur chi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan dele kshin Nyensen takto delek pe kuncho sumki chingi lop kuncho sumki ngodrubutsol kuncho sumki trashishon. All'alba
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all our realizations and to sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Oma hun tembalame sangye rinpoche, kyopalame tamcho rinpoche, trembalame gendo rinpoche, kyamne kuncho sumla chopa. Buon appetito. Grazie a tutti.
Enjoy your lunch, everyone. Thank you. And as we did yesterday, who leaves today or tomorrow morning that wants to come to say hi, then you're welcome. And who leaves tomorrow, we do tomorrow. So day by day. Thank you.